This one's called Euthanasia UK. So for those of you that don't know, in the UK, the Prime Minister, this guy called Keir Starmer, he's proposed an assisted dying law. So what does it mean? Well, first thing it means is that in the future, right? So first thing to clock here, Mr. YouTube censor, is this is about something that may or may not happen in the future, right? So you can't do me for medical misinformation. So basically, if this law happens, it would mean that in the future, NHS doctors and nurses could choose to end the life of one of their patients prematurely without running the risk of being taken to court for the crime of murder. Another way of looking at it would be, it's about making euthanasia, killing people before their time, making that legal, decriminalising euthanasia. So that sounds a bit harsh, doesn't it? Decriminalising euthanasia. Much better, I suppose, to call it assisted dying. It doesn't sound so bad that way, does it? They're quite keen on this, though, and you can tell that because the media are already manufacturing BS polls that purport to show public support for legalised euthanasia. So let's talk about how this could be used. So it could be used to cool the elderly, I don't know, people over the age of 70 or something, who don't work anymore and they claim pensions. So it's a way, it will be a way of cutting their expenditure on social security, pensions and stuff. That's the biggest single element of public spending, is social security. So if you killed off, reduce the number of pensioners, that would reduce government spending on pensions, so they could transfer that money that was saved into their pockets via the war machine, as a cover story. Klaus and the gang, they don't benefit from old people living a long and healthy life because, why would they benefit from old people being paid money to live out their twilight years? It's not in their interest, is it? Again, in the future, second reason is that it could be used to reduce the number of people who are disabled and economically inactive. So there's a lot of people that have got long-term health problems. So legalised euthanasia in the future could be targeted at them. And as well, like disabled people, they often require expensive medical treatments. So again, the government can save itself taxpayers' money and just divert the cash that they've been able to save into their pockets. I think a third one that I anticipate that they'll go for is like end-of-life care. So when somebody's suffering from cancer, rather than giving them expensive drugs that might prolong their lives by 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. What will happen instead is that an NHS GP, they'll decide that for the greater social good, it would be better for society if this person, the money was saved and maybe used for, I don't know, education or something like that. So I can see them doing that. End of life care is very expensive. If it goes on for too long, it costs the taxpayer too much money, costs the country too much money. So the solution is euthanize that person so they don't need all of this prolonged medical care that's very expensive. Another reason, another possibility or use for euthanasia would be you don't need as many people because of AI. So maybe it could be applied to people who've got an IQ of less than 80. So these people, they could be deemed a net drain on society, and they're useless eaters, they can't contribute. So for the collective good of society, these people need to be gotten rid of, you know, for the greater social good. There'll be a net gain for society if these people are euthanized. I don't know what we're up to now, number 5. Could be something along the lines of that plan, you know, that begins with K. So you could have somebody who wants to replace one ethnicity with another. So, you know, people could be targeted for euthanasia at a certain age, and it could be applied disproportionately to people of a certain ethnicity, an ethnicity that the central planners running that society don't like for whatever reason. And the last one, obviously, is global climate boiling change. So there's too many people on the planet. So what we need to do, obviously, is to reduce the number of people on the planet. We've got too many carbon emitting units, and for the greater social good, we need to get shot of some of them. And that way, you see, it'll be for the best of the whole of society, that we get rid of some of these CO2 producing units, especially like the units that no longer produce units of GDP, but just consume them and in the process create CO2. So at this point, I've got to emphasize here that these aren't my ideas. I'm giving you an insight into the mindset of the technocrats who are running countries like Britain. And that mindset is first and foremost a collectivist philosophy. So what is collectivism? Collectivism, it's a philosophy where the individual is seen as subordinate, in other words, not as important, to a social collectivity such as a state, a nation, a race, or maybe even a social class. That's the definition given in the Encyclopedia Britannia. French philosopher Jacques Rousseau, he said that he was a collectivist, and according to Rousseau, the individual finds his true being and freedom only in submission to the general will of the community. So I'll read that again. The individual finds his true being and freedom only in the submission to the general will of the community. So I'm going to say something like really, really worrying now, you know, as a former teacher. And that is collectivist ideology has been pushed like mad to your kids at school. And for those of you who are in Britain who send their kids to a private independent school, a public, so-called public school, don't think that you've got off lightly, because your kids will have also been subjected to this propaganda. So what I'm going to do now is just go through some of these kind of main propaganda messages that they've been trying to impart to your kids. So your kids are being taught that that decisions should be based on what's best for the group rather than what's best for the individual. So, you know, at school, they'll never dig into stuff like, well, who defines what's best, you know, best for who? And, you know, what if society is composed of different individuals who all have different subjective preferences? You know, if different people all define best in different ways, how can there be a single collectivist best? Obviously there can't be. Second value is they push this line that working as part of a group for a collective good is imperative. So again, who defines what's deemed to be good? Obviously, in practice, it's like central planners, isn't it? Technocrats. In the UK, that would be the people that appoint puppet Keir Starmer, and the civil service that just implements whatever Starmer's been told to implement. Number 3 is common goals are more important than individual goals. And schools indoctrinate kids into thinking that if you pursue your individual self-interest, what that is called selfish. And what's better instead is that you conform and pursue the goals that you've been told to pursue by the technocrats running your country. And again, no critical thinking regarding the merits of these common goals. No, that's not your place to question. What you must do is just be an obedient rule follower. And this is what schools teach first and foremost. And then the last one is that the rights of the state come before the rights of families and individuals. So, human rights only apply in plural as a collective. You don't have any human rights as an individual. So of course this should make sense now regarding what happened in 2021 with the thing that we're not allowed to talk about, that people had no choice, they were coerced into it. Personal bodily autonomy was not a human right. Terrible. So something else that's interesting, of course, is that these sorts of, I think you call it democide, when the government kills its own people. Like normies will think that, the government must be good, right, because it's the government, and the government would never harm its own people. And these people are either, if you believe that, you're either stupid or ignorant of history. You can't be anything else but those two things. So the best historical precedent for what Starmer is planning is what happened in Germany from 1940 to 1941, and it was called the Action T4 program, and it was organised by German National Socialist technocrats who were running the German economy and German society at that time. So what happened was, during that period, just over a year, the German government killed 300,000 of its own citizens. Most of the murders took place in hospitals. Oh, that sounds familiar. But back then they didn't have I think I can say, can't I? Because I'm not talking. They didn't have, in the 1930s. They didn't have midazolam. So what the German National Socialist technocrats did was that they instructed regular doctors to starve. It was mostly young people who had some sort of disability, or elderly people, or people who the technocrats in National Socialist Germany deemed to be, dangerous opinions that they didn't like. They would probably have committed hate speech. They came up with things that were verboten. You're not allowed to talk about that, comrade. There must be something wrong with you. So we're going to shove you on the Action T4 program and get rid of you for the great society, you see, will be better off without you. So for the greater social good, we're going to make a collectivist decision to end your life prematurely. So that, like, the motivations for that, some of it was economic. So they even produced propaganda posters explaining to the German people, and obviously German doctors, German nurses, that keeping disabled people alive costs the government money, and that money could be better spent on something else. The net social gain, the net social benefit would be positive of killing off these people and then redeploying the saved money to, I don't know, essential key workers in National Socialist Germany, or supporting, people of a certain ethnicity that were deemed to be more valuable than the groups that they were killing off. So for the Muppets that think all of this was revisionist history, like, how come there's so many of these posters? Are you saying all of this is faked? Because I don't think so. So like Starmer, the tiny German moustache man, he was also a collectivist. He believed that the individual should have no rights, and what the individual had to do was to conform to the collectivist social will of the state. And if that meant giving up your life, either fighting in Russia or having, I don't know, one of your disabled kids put to death in a state hospital for the collective social good, then you were just supposed to accept that. So collectivists, they can be fascists as well as socialists. So this is a quote from you-know-who. "The readiness to sacrifice one's personal work, and if necessary, even one's life, for others, shows its most highly developed form in the, something race that begins with A. The greatness of the race is not based on its intellectual powers, but rather on its willingness to devote all its faculties to the service of his community." So Starmer's already pushing similar, he's already using similar language to this, that people have to sacrifice their own feelings of their own well-being in order to save the NHS. Starmer, again, is like the tiny German moustache man in that he expects individuals to conform so that the greater social good is achieved. Individualism is wrong, according to both Starmer and the tiny German moustache man. Another quote that shows that the tiny German moustache man was collectivist was as follows: "We have to put a stop to the idea that it's part of everybody's civil rights to say what he pleases." So again, you can see that with Starmer. Starmer's trying to push through, under the guise of so-called hate speech laws. He wants to decide what is and what isn't hateful, and therefore what can and can't be said in a formerly free country called Britain. They've tried these assisted dying laws before. Will they have a better chance of getting it through in Britain this time? Maybe, because we had that training exercise that happened in 2020, where people had to not go to work, stay inside their house, stop living, basically. It was always about the greater social good. That was the excuse, wasn't it? So people have already been trained up in this collectivist way of thinking, and also schools teach a mono diet of collectivism. They're not taught about any other argument in favour of, say, individualism, which is the opposite of collectivism. There's also been predictive programming. So Logan's Run, a film made in 1976. So that film sets out a theoretical future where, for the greater social good, people have to genocide themselves. They have to go on some sort of special machine, and that ends their life at the age of 30. And the rationale for that is that is a resource scarcity. There's too many people on the planet, and there's not enough resources. So to conserve the resources, we have to kill people off. No one's allowed to live longer than 30. So, you know, there's a name for that, isn't it? To make it sustainable. You know, this is where the term sustainable development comes from. You know, in the future, could somebody like Starmer assert that to preserve to preserve the planet, legalise euthanasia will be necessary, and it'll be the better of two evils. You know, no one might like the state ordering you to your death at, I don't know, 30, 70. I don't know about you. Can anyone remember watching this? There was a video that got circulated about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was in black and white, and there were these old people, and they were like, the phrase that they kept on repeating was 70 is plenty, or 70 is enough, or something. And the gist of it was, you know, people shouldn't be living beyond 70. Maybe they should voluntarily choose to, you know, stop living by that time. So this new law that Starmer's proposing, could that morph into something like that? Could Starmer's law be the thin end that ends in that the end of the wedge, being mandated euthanasia at a certain age as determined by technocrats? The other film that most people on this channel probably will know about, or hopefully have watched, is 1973 Soylent Green, and similar sort of storyline in the sense that there's been some sort of economic collapse. There's too many people, there's not enough resources, it's all Malthusian. You know, check out my video that I did on Malthus, because the technocrats, that's one of their main guys is Thomas Malthus. Anyway, in that film there's a character played by Edward G. Robinson, fantastic actor, and he goes to I just have to say it, won't I? Suicide pod, a euthanasia pod, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, it's all very, very sad. But you know, the thing is that it's all foreshadowing, isn't it? Because these pods actually now exist. So this video, it might seem a bit, is it doom porn? I don't know, maybe. Should you worry about this? Can it be stopped? Let's talk about that. Can it be stopped? I think it can be stopped. You know, if you think about what happened in Germany in the 1930s, how many of these disabled kids or mentally deficient adults did the tiny German moustache man personally end? The answer is zero, I would have thought. Absolutely zero. You know, same as the other leading National Socialists. They didn't do it either. So who did do it? Well, the answer is thousands and thousands of doctors and nurses did it. And they were all, were they working in the free market? Was it the fault of private business? No, of course not. It's like all democides. It's done by employees of the state, public sector employees, public sector workers. And what they did was that they just follow orders. So the doctors, they followed, I suppose you'd call them the health protocols set out by National Socialist technocrats. Sounds very similar, you know, in the NHS at the moment, NHS doctors and nurses, everything's centralised, you see, in the NHS. when a patient presents with a symptom, they go onto the computer and the computer will tell the doctor or nurse what they should do, what the health protocol is for that particular health affliction. And NHS doctors and nurses get into a whole load of trouble if they fail to follow the health protocols. So I'm sure, you know, what happened in National Socialist Germany was similar. People just followed orders, didn't they? They followed the protocols. They did what they were told to do. And that's why it happened. So who was responsible for all of those deaths? Was it 300,000 people in the Action T4 programme? The answer is the people that were responsible were the low-level enablers. People who followed orders, did what they were supposed to do because they were worried about losing their job, or maybe even being imprisoned, locked up. I don't know, could be something interesting going on there with this Letby woman. You know, I did a video on her, you know, a while back. Maybe that was just a shot across the bows, like, we've got a lot on you guys, we can pull you in, we can chuck you in jail at the drop of a hat. So you better be good, obedient rule followers and not question anything. It's in your own interests to be like that. And then the final thing is, just from my own point of view, we've got to understand what we're dealing with. Do I expect people like GP, this GP that I know from Lancashire, that I used to know, call him Daryl, right? Do I expect him to do the same thing again? So if Starmer sets up something like the Action T4 programme, and he incentivises GPs to do it, will he do it? My thought is, yeah, he'll do it, no problem. If you give him some money, each person that he bumps off, you know, you give him 20 quid. Oh, he'd be well up for that. Well up for that. And then also, you know, you got to use the stick. So if somebody refuses to do it, then, you know, they get struck off, they lose their pension, whatever. That would be easy enough for people like him to do unbelievable acts of evil, just as it was in 1930s Germany. We haven't really changed at all. There's a hardcore of, I don't know, 30% real hardcore believers in this who are collectivists. And this is where this Daryl would be. He would think it's a good idea. Oh yeah, really good idea. You know, you've had a long innings. That's enough for you. You're too expensive. For the greater social good, you got to go. He would have no problem with that line of thinking whatsoever. Your life is over for the greater social good. No problem at all. Maybe then you get another 40% who are just like cowards and they'll just go along with it. They might not believe in it, but they'll go along with it for reasons of self-interest, you know. They want to keep their Jaguar and private education for their kids and that. So what am I planning to do about it? Well, personally, I would not go anywhere near the NHS. I know I'm living in Finland at the moment, so the chances of me doing that, well, they're zero, aren't they? But if I was living in Britain, I might consider going to A&E if I broke my leg, but other than that, no way. Because there's too much dodgy stuff that goes on inside there. It's a toxic organisation, isn't it? And you know, if you've not watched that interview yet with Felix Wickholm, it's the last video that I did. Watch it, because I think there's things that we can all do to keep ourselves healthy, rather than putting all of our trust misguidedly in the NHS. You know, we've all yeah, so they, you know, I can't say too much because obviously I'm talking about what is. So somebody might say the old, yeah. Anyway, I want this video to stay up. So yes, that's all I want to say today. So God bless.